The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
Last week, we had the pleasure of hosting Pedro Vieira, Director of Operations at 500 Global, one of the world's leading startup accelerators behind Canva, Reddit, Udemy, and many more. Our analyst, Georgy Aronia, talked to Pedro about 500 Global's Georgian chapter and the challenges and blessings of the Georgian startup ecosystem.
Pedro, hi. It's a pleasure to have you here at BMG.
Pleasure being here.
Pedro, it's been more than 2 years since 500 Global entered the Georgian market. What could you say about these 2 years?
Well, there were 2 years of learning for us and our local partners and for the founders, but overall very positive experience. We've already trained 30 companies. We've worked with local investors, and we're really excited about the future.
Based on your 2 years experience, what could you say about the Georgian startup ecosystem? What are its defining characteristics?
So one is its regional location, and the fact that it is a very friendly hub for all the countries in the surrounding region. And so that allows Georgia to place itself as a hub that can attract tech talent, aside from obviously retaining its own tech talent. So founders are very talented technologically here. Science and technology is strong in the country, and that's also that's always a good base for a tech ecosystem to start with. We believe that with some capacity building in some of the other areas, including commercial side, it's possible to build amazing companies here.
Could you compare Georgia statistics-wise to other countries that fall within your region? Are there any different trends that you could highlight?
I mean, what we like, it's always hard to compare in tech ecosystems because they're all different in different ways. What we see here is that the capacity to start companies in an efficient way, because the talent is still quite affordable, is very high. And so we see the companies here building services and products that can be very competitive globally. And when we expect that with our contribution of knowledge and capital, we can accelerate that.
As I know, the approach that 500 Global has while launching a particular country is very localized. You look at the country in very detail. What were the necessities that you had to reinstate in Georgia to run this program?
Yeah, as I was saying, what we see here is strong tech talent, quite affordable, and what we think we can do is complement that talent with other areas of knowledge that the founders need. They need to learn more about sales. They need to know more about scaling their companies to global markets. They need to know more about fundraising from international investors. And so that's the type of expertise that we bring with our accelerator. And then complementary to that, we also work with all the other stakeholders in the ecosystem. So this is not just about training the founders. We know an ecosystem needs all the stakeholders to play their role. So 500 is known for that. We're also working with local investors that are already acting and attracting more of them, working with the public policymakers to make sure that the regulation is in place. So we'll continue playing our role and working with the others.
What you just mentioned is the topic I wanted to cover as well. 500 Global cooperates very closely with the Georgian Innovations and Technology Agency, for instance, with any others agencies as well. What could you say about the cooperation between the two? How efficient are they? How willing are they to cooperate with you?
Very, very good. So our partnership started more than 2 years ago with the government through GITA, and on the private side with the Bank of Georgia. And it has been a three-way collaboration that's worked very well. Because as I was saying, we always need the public and the private sector to collaborate and play their roles. And in this case, it's worked very nicely. On one hand, we see strong will from the public side to implement or to support the right initiatives and to even potentially review policies or regulations that need to be revised for the growth of these startups in the country. And then on the private side, like the true investment from the Bank of Georgia in the first companies that we trained, and now their continued support for the next 4 years ahead. So it's been terrific to work with these entities, and we'll continue working with them and others who want to collaborate with us.
The cooperation you have with Bank of Georgia here in Georgia, is it something unique, or you cooperate with private business entities in other countries as well?
We collaborate with everyone who wants to collaborate with us around the world. The partnership with the bank has been, each partnership is somewhat unique, right? And so the partnership with the Bank of Georgia has been very, very interesting because of the role that they seem to want to play in the overall economy, in the overall ecosystem, sponsoring or supporting a lot of the Georgian-based initiatives. And this is one of them. And we're very happy that they've been a strong partner, not just on the capital side, but also on all other complementary initiatives that we've been trying to promote. And in that sense, it is unique, and we're happy with how it went.
How different is the acceleration program that you have in Georgia from, let's say, European acceleration programs? Are there requirements different, for instance?
This program is no different than the others in terms of requirements, and it's equivalent to our other programs. So no difference there.
You know, running a startup in Georgia is obviously tough. There are reasons for that, and this topic is very well known of. But what I want to ask you about is that what are the benefits, if any, of running a startup, a tech startup from Georgia?
Mm-hmm. Well, first I go back to my previous point on tech talent. So tech talent exists, is affordable. That's a very important layer for everything else. Then the second part is the fact that this is a small market can be seen as a disadvantage by many, but for us is actually an advantage. On one hand, you get to test your product more easily because it's easy to get to the Bank of Georgia or to other large corporations where you test the product and gets you ready to then scale to other countries after you have proven it. That makes it easier. And on the other hand, because the market, the local market or the domestic market is small, founders also have a global mindset from day one. They know that if they want to build something big, grandiose, competitive, they have to build for the global markets. And to me, that's super important when you're starting companies.
But that's all tough. You know, that's very tough to build a global startup out of such a small country. You know, what advice could you give? What are the main structural things that you would highlight for founders?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's tough. It has these advantages that you can test first before you scale globally. And then when you do scale globally, our advice is usually that first, obviously build something that's unique if you're going for the global markets, or if it's not unique, that it is very competitive. And for example, the competitiveness can be seen as a regional competitiveness. There's a lot of products and services that were tested elsewhere, and their playbook can be implemented by the companies here with a huge advantage because they know the economy, they know the culture, and so they can do that, they can turn that into their competitive advantage. If they are going to the global markets and other foreign markets, we always say, make sure that you pick the right market. So a lot of people think it has to be the US market. Sometimes it's the Asian market. In some cases, it may be the European market. So pick the right market. Third thing would be do it at the right time. If you go too early to one of these foreign markets, you may fail because you don't have the infrastructure ready. If you go too late, you may lose the momentum. So time it right. And then finally, do it with the right team. It's very hard to hire talent in foreign countries, in foreign cultures. And so what we see working well is for the founders to take that step first, understand how these new clients in these new markets think and buy, and then after that find the right local partners to continue the growth there. But doing it with the right team would be my last recommendation.
What is your take on how American and European investors see Georgia as a country? Is it attractive enough for them to make investment in tech startups? Because are they willing to take that risk, for instance?
I mean, I can't speak for all the investors, but we are a very good example of a leading investment firm who's been in Georgia for a couple of years now and will continue here for another 4 or more, we hope, right? And so we believe that there is more, there's growing attention from international investors to what's happening in Georgia in the broader region. And the things that we see being built here are very interesting investment opportunities, and I think that will continue happening. And then there's this opportunity that I think also investors see, again, not just about Georgia, but Georgia as a bridge and as a gate to a much bigger region, and we hope we can help with that too.
What could be the competitive advantage of Georgian tech startups? What could they do in a different way so that they compete with European or even Asian or American startups?
Yeah, I think picking up on the latter is one of the there's other advantages, but one of the things that can be highly explored by Georgian companies, and we're seeing that with companies like Payzy, for example, is they understand the other markets, but they understand that there's a big gap in their own market and in this bigger region, broader region. And so tackling these bigger opportunities in a region that the global players are not is a huge opportunity that we expect companies like Payzy, Cargon, others that we've trained in the previous programs and more will continue doing.
You mentioned several companies. Could you highlight a little bit more of them, the companies that you worked with before, what you like about them?
Yeah, well, when we have kids, you can't have a favorite. And I picked those two examples just because they're good examples of how companies are taking advantage of what they know from other markets, implementing and building things that are bigger in this market. Of all the companies we've trained here, what we like to see is, again, their drive to build something that's bigger than the domestic market. It's something that international investors will pay attention to, and it's something that it's services and products that are having a meaningful impact. These companies that we've trained we trained about 30 companies, and so what we see is many of them, their sales have grown 10x and more. They've raised more than 10 times the amount that we've invested. Their sales have doubled, tripled, in many cases much more than that. And with that, they create jobs and they improve the economy. And so what we want to see is these companies continuing that growth themselves and then having a positive impact in the local economy.
What makes 500 Global different, or what makes 500 Global stand out from other startup accelerators?
Well, I mean, I don't like to comment on others, but I can tell you what we believe is truly unique about us, is that many people use the sentence that talent is everywhere and opportunity is not. 500 from its inception has had this sentence in mind and in our DNA, and we've built a series of a family of funds and accelerators around the world that is indeed bringing knowledge and capital to where this talent is. And so we're creating this opportunity not just alone, but in partnerships with other local players. And that is truly unique. I think if you look at the results that we've achieved in over 10 years, they speak for themselves. We have more than 50 unicorns in the portfolio, many other companies between 100 and 1 billion valuation. So we think it works. We think it is a good way to complement what exists in these ecosystems. We don't come in to replace whoever's there. We come in to collaborate, to augment what's there. And this strategy seems to be working. So I would say it's very unique too, in that sense.
What are your future plans here in Georgia?
Well, one thing we know for sure, we are again in a partnership of 4 years with the government, with the Bank of Georgia, and in that we will train and invest in 120 companies at least. But this is just what we know in the short term. When we enter a region, we do it with a much longer vision, much longer horizon in mind, and so we expect that this is really just the beginning of a much longer presence for 500 in Georgia and in the broader region.
My last question, do you see Georgia as a way of some sort of regional hub for tech startups, for tech companies? Because we had a lot of huge influx of people, especially tech talents coming to Georgia in recent months. So given this and given the regulatory framework, do you envision Georgia as a potential place in the Caucasus where tech companies are being born?
Yeah. I do. Again, because of the nature of its people and the level of relationships and friendliness of relationships that it is able to attain with all the surrounding countries, because it's a relatively small domestic market, so people will build here but have the ability to then immediately start thinking about expansion because the talent is here and is affordable. And so, yes, we do believe that there's a huge potential for this to be a successful tech hub, a successful entrepreneurial hub. And again, we will be here to help with what we can.
Well, thank you very much, and let's hope that your vision is true. Thank you very much, Pedro.
Thank you so much for having me.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.